the equipment to protect workers. And it's very difficult situation from community members because they need to work. Doesn't matter what the situation because they afraid to lose the job. Sometimes they go sick to the workplace because they don't have another choices. And and this is the thing we're facing right now. Even my neighbors, they working in the restaurant. One neighbor, two brothers working in the same restaurant, and one died from COVID because they know they put these people to work so so close. And then this is the situation right now. And I think Sylvia has a presentation, and we're working together in that presentation.
Sylvia, did you want to? Sylvia's Marley, just jump a second. So all the panelists have the ability to like share screens, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Looks good. We can see your screen and it's full screen now. Yes, perfect.
Hey everybody, I also work with Dolores Castañeda. I'm staff on the Greater Lawndale Healthy Work Project. It's a project housed within UIC's School of Public Health, the Center for Healthy Work. And I'll pass it back to Dolores.
Yeah, are you gonna do it in Spanish or English, Sylvia?
If you want to do it in Spanish, there's
okay.
Subtitles.
You want me to do my the one I need to yeah, we have some metas en el proyecto, y las metas que necesitamos determinar es cómo es que de eliminar las barreras y los caminos para un trabajo saludable en las dos comunidades, que es en North London y en South London. Y en este, sorry Silvia, I'm confused. You know, want to explain this size first, Silvia?
Let me know what slide you need.
I need that one to is my part, like a Greater London Healthy Work Project aims. No, that one. I'm going to start again. Vamos a tratar de determinar cuáles son los caminos para un trabajo saludable en las dos comunidades, que es North London y South London. Y tenemos que escuchar a la comunidad, realmente qué la comunidad necesita para poder sacar alternativas para hacer un trabajo mejor para los trabajadores, más saludable, y también tener mejores iniciativas dentro del trabajo. Y una de las cosas que hacemos en el proyecto de la UIC es estar en el ground y entender y trabajar juntos con la comunidad en realidad cuáles son las barreras que tienen ellos en el trabajo para llegar para llegar a la meta de un trabajo saludable.
And we're just working on setting up the English closed captioning. So if you can't understand Spanish, hopefully we'll have the English closed captions available at the bottom. So bear with us for just a sec while we figure that out.
All right, that's fine. I'm just going to go back. So we're the Greater Lawndale Healthy Work Project. We've been around since 2016. By Greater Lawndale, we mean North Lawndale and Little Village. Together, they form the Greater Lawndale community. And we're interested to see how work affects health. So we've been engaging with residents for the past 5 years on that. And these are the project aims, as Dolores was mentioning. Just going to go through some of this. And then these are our partners that we work with. So we work with a mix of community individuals, worker centers, health centers and nonprofit organizations. So Chicago Community Workers' Rights, Equity and Transformation, SUHI, St. Anthony, Taller de Jose, and Tilposhkali. So our project utilizes a community-based participatory research framework. So we strive to be collaborative and encourage participation in all stages of the research, from collecting the data to manuscript writing, equitable, so actively striving to create equal power dynamics and decision-making processes, community-centered, and also recognizing the strengths that everybody brings. So academic partners bring their strengths, as outlined here. Community partners, they also bring their own strengths. And the focus is on merging social science and social activism for social change. So now we want to talk about some of the work that we've been doing in the Greater Lawndale community. So for the past 4 years, we've been collecting data, well, first forming our team of partners, and then collecting data, understanding the root causes of worker exploitation, analyzing our data findings, and then going back to the community and asking them, did we get this right? Did we interpret these findings correctly? So it's been a very long process, and now we are finally at the stage of designing these 4 community interventions. And so the first initiatives. The first initiative has to do with media messaging and changing knowledge, norms, and perceptions. And so we will be rolling out a Loteria/Bingo educational game about how work affects health. We want to produce some lawn signs and short videos. And to make our messaging relevant, we want to utilize a COVID-19 lens and also a racial unity lens to address tensions between and points of unity between Black and Brown workers in Greater Lawndale. I forgot to mention, Little Village is primarily Mexican and Latinx. North Lawndale is primarily Black. Our second initiative has to do with enhancing systems in Greater Lawndale. And we want to do this by developing some webinar workshops with temp agency employers in Greater Lawndale. And we're looking to collaborate with the Chicago Workers Collaborative on this. Our other initiative has to do with, it's twofold, creating community wealth, and then supporting policy initiatives, and then also increasing opportunities for entrepreneurship and cooperatives. So doing this twofold, one by doing a policy and power analysis on the state of informal work, and then 2, supporting local co-ops and identifying what's happening, what needs to happen, how residents could get involved, and then developing 1 to 2 co-op ideas. And then the last initiative, before I give it back to Dolores, is a COVID-19 story project to describe how COVID-19 has impacted workers in Greater Lawndale. And we're working with Yollocalli Arts Reach and Free Spirit Media to help us with that storytelling project. So now I'll pass it back to Dolores, and she's going to talk about some recent work that we've been doing with street vendors and small businesses to raise consciousness about safety guidelines regarding COVID-19. Is the closed captioning working now?
That,
Is the closed captioning working now?
I can only see them in Spanish at the bottom, and I'm trying to see if there's a link. We should have had a way to switch them to English, and I have not received instructions yet. So we might, if
Can do it in English.
if we can maybe just go back and forth for the meantime, to translate, that might be helpful. And I'm trying to see if we can get it set up.
That's okay. With this project, Sylvia explained is infograms, because I noticed a little bit is that street vendors get COVID-19 and some street vendors die because the customer they not protect themselves. Like you see in the picture, the man who's selling bread, he has covered mask, but sometimes the customer they not protect, and the street vendor they get sick, and some die. And I really concerned about street vendors in my community, and start focusing what we can do through UIC to protect this population. And we created an infogram in English and Spanish to give instruction to the customer to read it and be close to the not be close to the street vendor, because I noticed, for example, a lady who's selling tamales. I see that customer is so close to the lady, and not wearing nothing to cover the face. And we put like these signs in front of the street vendor cars, and we give hand sanitation for the street vendor, try to protect this population, this vulnerable population. And that way, and the other thing we do, I went to North London to do the same thing, to put signs in different spaces and a small business in the street that people remind, like in this picture is in North London, and over here is a little village, and try to encourage people to protect this population. And this is one of the goals we do in the project. And the other thing we do is campaign from vaccination for vaccinate the people, and we vaccinate 735 people in the community. And we have COVID testing too, and we have like 330 people testing for COVID-19. And this is the thing the community needs right now, to be protected, to not get sick, because this population not have insurance, they not afford it to be sick. And I try to go around the community and talk with the street vendor what really need the barriers from the street vendor. And I see police brutality. They share with me, police come and ask for the permit to selling, and when they don't have it, they throw the stuff in the floor, or they use the power to intimidate this population. And I understand that people need a permit, but we in the pandemic, and they need to be more empathy with the street vendor, because it's too much trauma already. And plus that, and this is the situation right now. We try to working to eliminate some barriers to these people have that permit, to not be constantly the police start bother this population. Sylvia.
Yeah, that's our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia and Dolores. That was really, really impactful, I think, talking about, one of the most important parts of organizing and us trying to get out of the situation that we are in regards to this pandemic is, the first part of that is always education. It's always about making sure that people know, again, what their rights are, that they are in the precarious situations that we're in, have at least some resources to be able to keep themselves safe. And so thank you all for the work that you're doing here. I just wanted to be clear about how we're moving forward through this. So each of the panelists are going to have 7 minutes to present on, again, the work that they're doing. And then afterwards, we're going to come back around and engage with them more deeply and ask questions. And at the end of once the panelists are done answering the starting questions, then folks can start putting in the chat the questions that they have for the panelists, and I'll make sure to sift through and have folks ask the questions that they want to. So thank you all for bearing with me on that explanation. I want to actually move it over now to Sandy, Sandy from Warehouse Workers for Justice, to talk about the work that her organization is doing.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. This is exciting, having this food summit. We're learning a lot about all the, the food chain, like where we fall in the food chain and what type of work we're doing. My name is Sandy Moreno. I'm the lead organizer with Warehouse Workers for Justice. Warehouse Workers for Justice is a worker center with offices in Chicago and in Joliet. We focus on educating workers on their rights and to exercise their rights to fight for more just workplace in the warehouse industry, right? So where do we fall under the supply chain, right? Like we fall under like the distribution centers. So basically, as we've heard of like the farmers, we've heard of the research they're doing in UIC, like the street vendors, but all the food that we're consuming right now, like it has to go through a warehouse too, right? Where they package your goods. So it goes off to distribution to either a retail, to the restaurant, or even directly to the consumer's house. So we fall under the warehouse industry, and our warehouse workers, we strive to like fight for better working conditions in this industry. I guess before I start, I do want to like briefly talk about a little bit of the context and history in the warehouse industry so that we can kind of know why we do the work that we do and like why workers are currently fighting the fights they have right now. So we see that like years ago, maybe going back to like before 1995, like we've had a history of the warehouse industry being mostly unionized. So mostly unionized means that a lot of the workers had decent wages, benefits, better working conditions, predictable schedules, and the traditional direct hire employment, which is, I'll put a pin on that. I'm going to come back to it to explain the current situation that's happening here in the warehouses. And, we've seen, the present year, 2005 to the present, like, because there's this globalized economy where like the Asian imports is driving the creation of like new rail and distribution hubs, right? So part of who is using the rail and distribution of this food, it is food corporations. And just to name a few, it's like Trader Joe's, Mars Candy, right? Goya Foods, and just to name a few. And so they're using these rails for the movement of the goods. And as we've seen, like a lot of this, like more rails coming up, this distribution hubs. But also we've seen with Amazon, right? Amazon has a lot of warehouses now. Since 2014, we've seen like the construction of so many warehouses. But I'm pointing out Amazon right now because they started their network with the focus on the last mile logistics delivery systems, right? So basically what this means is that, they want to move the goods as fast as possible so that we can get our products quickly. So if I could like reach out to you and just like grab my product, that would be amazing for Amazon, right? But what this happens is that it places the worker in a position where they have to work a lot faster, right? And with COVID-19, we've seen that there's little to no time to like clean your station, go to the bathroom, wash your hands, and like protect yourself from the COVID-19. So we've seen a rise in like COVID cases in these Amazon warehouses, as we have seen in the media. But all that to say is that Amazon is also being part of the food chain. Amazon is getting into the food industry with Whole Foods. We've heard of Amazon Fresh. We've heard of like the Amazon grocery stores, right? That are going to come up like near the suburbs in Illinois. So that's a thing to kind of think about as we think of organizing and the work that we do. We want to make sure that we're creating these warehouses, but we're also fighting for better jobs, better and decent wages. So the flow of goods has been changing, but also the structure of the warehouses. And One of the works that we have been doing is with a particular warehouse. It's the Mars warehouse. So I'll be showing you a small diagram that we created, but the Mars warehouse in itself is a food warehouse, right? It's where you know, this Halloween you guys are going to hear a lot about, you know, your candy, the candy that you're gonna eat, right? The M&Ms, the, you know, the Snicker bars, the you name it. So, you know, I'm gonna show you how not only like the good system has been changing over the years, where like everything's so quickly, so fast paced, like in just-in-time logistics, but also how the structure of the warehouses have changed so much that the work that we do as organizing, like it makes it a lot difficult. But I also want to show you guys like what we encounter in let me share my screen real quick. So 1 second. Okay, can you guys see this? Okay, perfect. So, all right. So, you know, before it was the Mars, where the warehouses in itself, they used to hire people directly, right? People directly, and then that means that they probably get better benefits, you know, better working conditions, like better pay. Now, as the movement of goods changes, also the structure of the warehouses. One of the warehouses that we've been organizing in is called the Mars warehouse, like I said, and this one is located in the Will County area. So if you see at the top, you see Mars warehouse, and basically what it means is that that's the leading company, and then we have like third-party logistics, which is DHL and XPO on the blue side, right? And those are the companies that are changing, that are, you know, distributing the goods. Like XPO deals with packaging your candy for Halloween, and then DHL goes out and like ships it to the retail stores or wherever they're gonna end up, right? So we've seen that, you know, these companies have been subcontracting, right? They're subcontractors, and then we find out that there's other like staffing agencies that provide the labor that they need to do that work. So for example, on the XPO side, which is a third-party logistics and one of the top 10 like logistics company in the nation, we see that we find almost 6 different staffing agencies that staff workers, you know, along the food chain. And these are the people that are packaging right now your candy, that are packaging everything that we're going to see right now in Halloween. And then we see here on the DHL side, I don't know if it's on your left side, but we do see the direct hires. So there's little direct hires. And how this makes the work a little bit more challenging is because we do end up with a lot of temporary workers, right? So let me stop sharing now. 1 sec. Okay. So we do end up with a lot of temporary workers. So, you know, who are these workers that end up in like the staffing agencies, right? We work a lot with temporary workers who are also called like the permatemps. Permatemps are workers who have been working as temporary workers for like 2 to 3 years. At this point, they shouldn't be temporary workers. They should be direct hires, right? We also have workers, you know, who don't get paid like a low wage, and the workers that end up in like these staffing agencies and low paying jobs is basically a mix of like contingent labor, like immigrants or previously incarcerated folks. So you know that these structures now, from being like, you know, unionized to like coming down to, you know, nowadays the structure has been the way that the company sees. There's no way to put blame on the working conditions of the workers because of these same structures, right? So this is what you know, we deal with warehouse workers. We know that it's actually getting a lot more difficult to organize. But at the same time, we do know that the workers in the food chain are being exploited, right? So if anything, we have learned that, you know, warehouses have remained profitable and open during the pandemic, and on the back of these essential workers, right? So we're expecting to see a growth in the warehouse industry when the pandemic ends. You know, the labor from warehouse workers helps generate like 3.5% of the nation's GDP. So like, let me repeat that again. Like, the labor from the warehouse workers in the Will County area alone helps generate 3.5% of the nation's GDP. What that means is that, you know, essential workers aren't getting essential pay and also having to expose themselves to COVID, even though they're creating all this profit for these corporations. So that's our work and our vision, right? We see warehouse workers as strategically located in one of the biggest like inland imports in the United States. And like our vision as WWJ is to work alongside warehouse workers. And we recognize that the workers, the power that they have along the food chain. And we are ready to put up a fight for better working conditions that go beyond the global pandemic, seeing how the different structures have changed along the way. So right now, as I said, we are currently organizing at the candy giant, the Mars warehouse that's located in Joliet. And so that's part of the work that we're doing. You know, I'll talk a little bit more, you know, in the question sections, but the Mars Warehouse Workers Committee right now are demanding better working conditions during the global pandemic. And that's one of the fights that we have here at WWJ.
Sandy, thank you so much for that thorough understanding of logistics workers and folks working in the warehouses. Because as folks know, as time is going on, or companies like Amazon are consolidating more and more of the market, whether it is in food or it's in tech or it's in whatever. It's getting to a point where they've cornered so much of the general market that they feel emboldened when it comes to taking away more and more of workers' rights and caring less and less about safety. So the work that Sandy and Warehouse Workers for Justice is doing is really imperative at this point in time. I want to turn it over to our last panelist to talk about their work. Allie Baker from Restaurant Opportunities Chicago, please tell us about some of the work that you all are doing and your position in ROC Chicago.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Allie Baker. I'm an organizer with the Restaurant Opportunities Center United in Chicago, also known as ROC Chicago. We're a local branch of a national organization that focuses on better working conditions and wages for restaurant, barista, and hospitality workers. And also, I just quickly wanted to thank the Chicago Food Policy Action Council and all my fellow panelists for their efforts before and during the COVID-19 pandemic, and to SIFPAC for putting this event together. And I also wanted to shout out a thanks to Marsha Love and her colleagues at UIC for helping me with some research inquiries. So I'll just give you a little background about ROC and then kind of move into the work we're doing. The first ROC chapter formed in New York in 2001. Originally, it was a worker relief center for restaurant employees at Windows on the World, which was atop of the World Trade Center. It was tragically struck down during the 9/11 attacks. One survivor of the tragedy who was not working that day was the first ROC member, and now is the president and CEO of ROC. After the New York chapter was formed, other chapters started to open, and thus ROC Chicago opened in 2008. Has been fighting for better working conditions and wages ever since. In the past, we've focused on municipal ordinances, like trying to eliminate the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers, saving tips from becoming the property of management, and coordinating leadership development through training programs, protests, and membership meetings. We also focus on eliminating sexual harassment from the restaurant industry, which is the restaurant industry is has a huge amount of sexual harassment, and like other low wage industries. So we've hosted events that have helped members to move through the process, including live protests in front of restaurants, helping them with lawsuits and know your rights trainings. We also offer a program called CHOW, which stands for Colors, Hospitality Opportunities for Workers. And it's a workforce development program that teaches soft skills, culinary arts, bartending, high-end front of the house steps of service, and more. The program is meant to serve folks who either want to enter the restaurant workforce and who do not have any formal training, or for folks who would like to move up in the industry so that they can perhaps make more money and learn more skills. And it's also meant to be able to help people with formal resume training and job placement opportunities after graduation from our program. And CHOW is also meant to help eliminate racial inequalities in the restaurant industry by providing educational opportunities for BIPOC folks who tend to be hired for back of house positions that do not pay as well, while white counterparts tend to be hired for high-end tipped or non-tipped positions with better opportunities to make more money. So one of ROC's biggest goals is to eliminate on-the-job harassment and racial inequities of any kind. So during COVID-19, ROC has been focusing on keeping workers safe, holding workshops so that they know their rights, helping to empower our members through policy education, also giving away PPE, children's masks, face shields, regular size masks. We were also able to help with some direct monetary relief to restaurant workers and their families so that they could buy groceries and pay utility bills. We were able to give out about $47,000 in the beginning of the pandemic. Unfortunately, the need for cash was so overwhelming that we quickly ran out of money, but we're hoping to bring that back. And so it's our hope through education during this time, especially doing the Know Your Rights trainings, and keeping restaurant workers who are, some of the lowest paid workers out of any industry to begin with before COVID are now facing terrible, wealth inequality, racial wealth inequality, even to a more extreme degree. So that's something that we've really been focusing on with this COVID work. So, we want Chicago to become a more equitable place in general for restaurant workers and hospitality workers so that we can lead the way. Since Chicago is known for its restaurants, we're kind of on the other end of the food chain system where we have a lot of frontline workers. We have servers who are dealing face-to-face with customers who may or may not have COVID. As we move into the winter, there's going to be more indoor seating. Now we're in phase 4. And so that means that we're going to be moving to 50% capacity within the restaurants, which means more exposure. And we're seeing the rates actually of COVID within restaurant work go up. I've had many conversations, including today, with members who feel scared to go to work because they are coming in contact with people who know they've tested positive for COVID, and they say, what are the protocols? Like, I don't know what to do. Do we have to have temperature checks? And that's another thing, is that the work is piling on for servers and, for other folks who work in the restaurant, because they have to, enforce city mandates, with people who might not necessarily want to wear masks all the time. And they're having to do temperature checks for people, which is like kind of a nurse job. Plus, make sure that the customers are happy and satisfied with their food, and on top of their normal duties. So I think that this COVID situation has really added the amount of work, added the amount of stress, and, you know, added to the amount of well, you know, at the very beginning of COVID, we had a 50% drop in employment in the greater Chicago metropolitan area. And now it's about a quarter or so of restaurant workers that are unemployed, and hospitality workers are unemployed. So we still have a large number of unemployed, but people have been gradually going back to work. And so the concern for their safety is very high because most restaurant workers don't have a lot of protections. They're not unionized. So basically ROC is trying to help them understand the rights that they do have and empower them through workplace justice campaigns to help folks feel safe in their workplace. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Ooh, that was funny. Thank you so much, Ali. That was, you literally landed it just on time. And I think, again, extremely important to hear from you and the fact that you represent these workers, because they are on the front lines. They work with customers every single day. And I think the situation that restaurant workers especially is a very unique situation. And so I kind of want to move to a general question for all of the panelists. Again, thank you so much for talking about some of the work that you are doing. We're going to get more deeply into that in the next 40 minutes or so. So just a general question that everyone has to answer. You feel free though if the spirit moves you. But one question that I had is, how have your workers that you represent been essential all this time? And do you see that designation as problematic in any way? Because I think that, you know, this phrase of essential worker has been used as of recently, and it wasn't something that, you know, was in people's general vocabulary prior. But you all know that the work that you've been doing has been essential in this particular industry that you all work in. So in what ways have the people that you represent, the workers that you represent, been essential all this time? And do you see that designation that is being used now as problematic in any way? And feel free to chime in at any time.
I can just go ahead and start with that first question. So continuing with the restaurant situation, even though we're in a pandemic, people are still going out to eat. They're still going out to coffee shops. And as long as there is a demand for restaurants, hotels, baristas, et cetera, that we see every day, when we drive down the street, that people are eating in restaurants and going to coffee shops. But so as long as that's happening, then restaurant workers are definitely going to be essential, especially coming face to face with people who may or may not be infected. A lot of restaurant workers, especially those who primarily work for tips, are having to come face to face with people who may be infected. Some of these customers might not even know that they are, but servers and baristas really don't have a choice to come in. They either come face to face with customers or lose their job, and then they have zero income. So I would say that restaurant workers are definitely essential, and that is problematic because they're paid so little with no benefits for the most part, for such a high risk of possibly becoming infected and taking it home to their loved ones, and some of whom have immune issues already.
I'm gonna make a comment about Ali say, like I mentioned before, my neighbor, they working in a restaurant, two brothers, and one brother died from COVID. But it's very difficult for this population, even when it's immigrant population, when they not have documentation, they target to be more exploited, and they afraid to not working because they're gonna lose job and opportunities for these people, and sometimes they even share with me they going to work sick. They not say anything too afraid about the boss say something or say don't coming back again. And this is the situation for our workers, exceptional workers, especially in food, working in restaurant or packing meat, things like that. Even in another case, this man working in packing meat, and he get COVID, and he not say nothing to his wife and contagious the wife, and then grandma get COVID-19 and grandma died. And then the blaming the man, the wife blaming the man if you fall and things like that. But you see all the trauma the community facing right now, and the problem is not healing part. We need to be now in this moment to be more empathy, more considerable communities, and be like, for example, police brutality in South London. We street vendors, they don't care about they in the pandemic. They still struggling. They still have so many problems, and they still have police brutality. And I wish I can do a petition to write about let the street vendor, let this population alone. We in the pandemic, we need to have healing component. I don't know, this is my opinion.
Yeah, so to answer your question, with warehouse workers, we have seen that, the products and necessities that consumers need during the pandemic are still, being shipped through online orders. Warehouse workers are still working, or even working a lot more during COVID because of the demand of these products, right? So with that being said, like I said before, there's little to no time to like disinfect their workplaces and to, wash their hands more frequently. So yes, this whole time they have been essential, but even before they were essential, right? But I think that the good part about this, talking about essential workers, is that now even consumers and the workers themselves are seeing themselves as essential and recognizing the value that they provide to everyone. And so my hope, and from what I've heard, is, we have been drawing the connections between, the labor that they're providing right now in this crisis, and also, still the labor that they're providing, and for these corporations that are accumulating like still profits during like a global pandemic. So yeah, I think it's the word essential is, flowing a lot more in people's, consciousness. Like, people are understanding more about who is essential during these times. So yeah, so as organizers, we always try to draw that connection between the work that they do and the value that they provide. And now we can think of these workers as, even hopefully once the pandemic is over, they're still going to be providing this value, so hopefully we can fight bigger fights as well.
I actually wanted to stay on you, Sandy, for a moment, because you were talking about just the essentiality of warehouse workers, and how there's still going to be a demand for the things that warehouse workers are putting together, and so in a lot of ways, that warehouse workers are the gateway for the food chain. The raw products can't make their way to consumers without stopping in a factory or starting in a warehouse. So, you touched on it a little bit. Could you talk a little bit more about the warehouse workers' role in the supply chain, and also about your recent organizing work with Mars Candy Factory and some of the demands that workers are making there?
Yeah, so the role in the supply chain, like I said, it's basically getting those products out on time for the consumer. Right now, we are in a big fight. Like I said, and I mentioned, we have what's the Mars Wrigley warehouse. It's the Mars family is one of the nation's, billionaires. And at the same time, we're seeing that the workers in this warehouse are, not being treated fairly, especially during COVID. We have been organizing in this warehouse, and the workers circulated a petition. The petition is demanding paid sick leave, hazard pay, adequate PPE, adequate workplace sanitation, eliminating the point system that oftentimes the warehouses have, and to meet and discuss, the ways that they can ensure the worker safety. So I'm going to plug in the petition. We have been in this fight since July, and we've seen that, not only does this big corporation with so much money is not taking care of its workers during this global pandemic, but at the same time, there's been retaliation happening because these workers are asking for the bare minimum, right? For the protections that they need. I am going to plug in the petition here in the chat, and the petition is for every one of you, like for the public to have. Basically, we need everyone's support. We need everyone to tell the Mars warehouse to do the right thing, to stop the retaliation, especially during these times when workers and the economic collapse basically of the system, like it makes it harder for workers to find a job. So I encourage everyone. I want to ask if you guys can, sign that petition. It's very important. And, we need your help. We need the public's help. We need, we need to stop these kinds of things happening in the warehouse industry. So the petition, it's right here on the chat for everyone to sign on to it, so that we can all demand the Mars warehouse to give workers what they need and to stop the retaliations from happening, period. And another thing is workers, because of the retaliations that have been happening, this October the 27th on Tuesday at 11, location to be discussed, but please follow us on Facebook at Warehouse Workers for Justice. We will put all of the information there, but we're having a press conference on Tuesday, the 27th of October. We're gonna expose Mars for what's going on. We're going to expose their bad behavior with the workers and the retaliation, and we hope to see everyone there. This is a time to, link up arms from all food chain workers, right? And to fight for better jobs and, better protections. And hopefully, like I said before, hopefully this fight will lead us into, even beyond the pandemic, right? The vision is that we can help workers organize and get better protection so that they're not left alone and they're not left with the fear of speaking out. So we need everyone's support. We need everyone to be there. And please follow us, and we'll keep you updated. But those are the two things that are ongoing right now.
Thank you, Sandy. Support the Mars workers, sign that petition, share it with your networks. We are here because we care about workers at large, right? So please do whatever you can to support WWJ and the work that they're doing with our Mars workers. Sylvia, I wanted to pass to you for a second because, you talked about this, you and Lotus talked about this at the beginning, some of the work that you all did at UIC. One of the most important parts of organizing is education, actions, policy building, agitation, demands. All these things cannot be done until those who are affected by the problem really understand the nature, the severity, and the reality of the problem that they're facing. And political advocacy requires that. And so how, you talked about a little bit in the beginning, but could you go more in depth on how your organization has contributed to this fight and raising consciousness for workers and then and affecting change? But then also you talked about some of the work that you did out in the community, and have you seen that those efforts have been working? And if not, or if so, what more kind of supports do you feel like you need?
Yeah. Those are all really good questions. I'll see if I could try to answer some of that, and I'll ask Dolores to chime in whenever she sees fit. So raising consciousness and movement building efforts is definitely really important. I'm not an authority figure on this topic at all. I'm also learning. I'm a student in figuring this out, just like everybody else is. And with our project, Dolores and I shared that we follow a community-based participatory research framework in working in communities around research, and CBPR for short. And CBPR actually has a lot of roots in the popular education movements in Latin America with like Paulo Freire, if people are familiar with that, with the philosophy. And so with CBPR, what we strive to do is to make the research process more participatory and more accessible. And one of the primary principles is that everybody has something to share, whether it is your experiences, lived experiences, your research skills, knowledge in many areas, and everybody has different ways of understanding and relating. And so not everybody likes PowerPoints, I think I fall heavy on the PowerPoint usage, but we also try to utilize other methods. Some people are more visual learners. And so this is how we're raising consciousness, is about really changing the way that we do research to make it more engaging and more participatory. And some of the activities that we've been doing in the community to raise consciousness about like how work affects health is understanding like the driving forces. So doing root cause mapping to develop shared understandings of the driving forces that fuel worker exploitation. I think there's a lot of power in naming and claiming exactly like how does white supremacy play in our lives and affect this current political situation. And then also like how colonization, past, present, has also continued to fuel these inequalities. And, it's not just a one-time conversation that, we engage with in the community, but it's a continuous one that comes up more often than not. In North Lawndale and Little Village, where we work, for example, Little Village primarily Mexican/Latinx, North Lawndale primarily a Black. We talk about, the police presence, ICE, and a lot of the similar roots issues that come with that, like surveillance, mass incarceration. A lot of the roots are very similar, but the ways that they manifest are different. And I think that in these communities of color, it is important to name those differences, as well as naming the points of unity, but we're also coming from different realities. So, so there's power in that as well. So that's how we, raise consciousness. I forget your other questions that you had, or Dolores, did you have something else to add?
My passion is community, and I like to be in the ground, and I always be UIC. I ask UIC to have a moment to reflect what we're doing in that resource and see we do really listen the community or not. And I like to be more in the ground, listen and the communities and see what really the communities try to say to us. And that way that continue the resource. I don't like when only the resource thinking about, this is for the community, we thinking it's gonna burden the community. I always say no, let's reflect and start again, because resource is complicated, but we need to include the community all the time.
And then one other thing is also like in ways that we need support. I think that, as a research institution, like Dolores has mentioned, sometimes like research and the words that we use get complicated, and using certain terminology has a double-edged sword. Like on the one hand, I think there is power in using certain terms and claiming that, using that for the struggle. But on the other hand, sometimes it's not accessible. And so I think we fall to the community to have those discussions and have like community check us and to make sure that like the research that we're doing is grounded, does make sense, things like that. So we need the research institutions need the community. I would say that communities also need research institutions to elevate their work. We both need each other, and so it's a mutual process.
Thank you so much, Sylvia and Lotus, and thank you for your work. I wanna shift it over to Ali. So one of the unique aspects of restaurant workers are that, again, they are frontline workers. They are the ones working with customers every single day and have different people that are not just their employees, their coworkers that are hanging around them. And so, but they're not paid nearly the same as some other, frontline workers for the danger that they are in. So can you talk a little bit about, again, some of the challenges that they face, protections they don't have, and then again, what the workers are demanding and have been demanding?
Yeah, definitely. So as you mentioned, restaurant workers are, bottom of the barrel paid workers. In the United States, the minimum wage for tipped workers. So just let me, a tipped worker is, according to the Department of Labor, anybody who makes about $30 a month or above. So anyone who makes that amount or above can be qualified to make the sub-minimum wage, which not all states have, but most states in the United States have a sub-minimum wage of $2.13 an hour. So imagine working during COVID for $2.13 an hour and primarily relying on customers, which have dropped, in mass quantities. So here in Illinois, the sub-minimum wage is, it was $6.40 an hour. Now it's moved to $8.40 an hour. For Chicago and Illinois, it's at $4.25 an hour. So obviously those are not living wages. And when we're continuing to work for tips, I think that is a huge concern, because restaurant workers tend to have, or not usually unionized. So they don't have a lot of protections as far as, strikes, and we're supposed to be able to strike, but it's a very gray area, right? Like, so if you're not unionized and you're organizing a strike, the law is probably going to tend to favor the employer, if you're going to be real about it. They say that there are protections, but I have yet to see those kind of protections for like folks. In Chicago, there was an ordinance that is supposed to protect whistleblowers during the COVID pandemic. So anybody who is, facing COVID on the job is supposed to be able to, or if the employer is not following city and health regulations, then they're supposed to be able to like whistleblow. And but a lot of people, especially like undocumented folks, they're not going to do that because they're still afraid, right? Because they feel like they don't have protections, which is true. So I actually had a member help me out with this question, and I'm just going to quickly kind of read her experience in a restaurant here in my neighborhood in Logan Square. So she says there's a general tension and unease in restaurants, trying to maintain the guest experience as a relaxing break from cooking and the fun of being out and socializing while enforcing mask use and social distancing. It puts servers at a disadvantage when they rely on tips to survive. The restaurant I work at has changed the way it pays servers to the standard minimum wage as opposed to a tipped minimum wage. This has been huge for us as we feel more comfortable enforcing rules and not worrying as much about a slow night drastically changing our income for the week. Still, the precautions put in place are for the customer to feel safe. Tables 6 feet apart or plexiglass separating the customers do nothing for a server dropping off food or refilling water and clearing dirty dishes. If we get sick, there's no sick pay, which there is supposed to be sick pay passed on July 1st. The sick pay ordinance says for every 40 hours worked, 1 hour of sick pay is supposed to be acquired, but it's very hard to enforce. Anyway, she says, if my restaurant has to close for cleaning and testing, I'm without pay. I make half as much as I made before, and the pandemic and my bills have not changed. My mortgage has not changed. We have no choice but to work or lose unemployment, no matter how scared we may feel. If we have a loved one who is high risk, we will still have to work with lower wages than ever and no benefits if we get sick. If we need paid sick leave, she says we need paid sick leave, a fair wage, and benefits to survive during these times. So probably a lot of workers would concur, and I think that a lot of workers right now are also asking me to just know what their basic rights are, and I think that workers need more stringent laws from the city as we go into this reopening phase for restaurants, because those frontline workers are really facing a lot of danger.
Thank you, Ali. One of the things that make pair all of your organizations together are that all of your workers work in food, which is an essential need for every living thing on this planet. All of the workers that you all represent are all essential. Their jobs are essential. The things that they do, this country and the world could not run without them. So the amount of power that every single one of the workers that you represent and your organizations as a whole have is immense. It is huge. The power that you have could bring this country to a halt and bring the operations of this country to a halt. Because again, the country relies on the work that the workers you represent do every single day. And so it's incredibly important for us to think about how we can harness that power, I think. And so I have a general question to all of you, and again, not everyone has answered, but this is a question to every single one of you, is how can workers across the supply chain better support one another? How can workers for those who work in restaurants, those who work in the meatpacking industry, from those who work in warehouses, how can they all come together and support one another? Because the workers of the world have to come together to be able to overcome the issues that they all face individually. So anyone can take that one.
I believe that is a difficult question to answer, because right now we have the COVID-19, and almost all the workers, they survivors, to make the basic needs. They need to work 2 jobs, and then to get together with other workers to fight for the rights. It's like I think in the back and the last and the least, these workers now they thinking more in how I gonna pay the rent, how I gonna provide food for my family, or in case they get sick, how they can go access to medical care. I wish I can be, find the answer for that. But yeah, it's more like working together and healing part, because it's a lot of situation about stress and people not focus because they have so many things around them. And I believe right now is personally, I believe how we gonna do healing, and then when they are healing and they feel more strong, we can start fight more and united.
Thank you, Dolores. Anyone else want to take that big behemoth of a question?
Well, in a sense, we are currently doing it right now, right? With the Mars warehouse, we're linking up arms. Everything that we have in common here is food, and we've gotten the support from different organizations. And this is to say that workers, if you're out there and you feel like might be alone, you're not alone. You have communities, you have organizations backing you up who can give you the tools to organize and to, better your workplaces. And, we can try to use like all kinds of tools to like achieve what we can. So there's a lot of power in numbers. So while it might seem, that there's COVID, that there's a lot of, there's a crisis ongoing, and it's true. And people are in fear of their jobs, which is true, right? But we also have to embrace the fact that the collective is actually, there's more power in numbers. And if we all link up arms, whether it's, with community organizations and other folks who are actually working in the food industry, for example, that's helping us with the Mars organizing, you're not alone. So we can actually take this fight and win. So, yeah, that would be my answer for you guys. Like, we're not alone. We can all link up arms as long as we know that we deserve better. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Sandy. Any more cents that folks have? 2 cents, 6 cents.
One quick thing, Hugo, that I wanted to mention is that we are, yes, I agree with everything that everyone has said so far, and want to lift up the regulations part of this, because I think part of what is creating the crisis, or part of what's exacerbating the crisis, is the fact that there is a whole lot of confusion about what the rules and regulations are during the pandemic, both at the state, federal, and at the local level. And I do think that there's a sort of a quick and easy way to fix that. And that is that there are already bills that have been passed by the House of Representatives that do a whole lot to getting things like CDC parity with OSHA. For those of you who don't know, the Centers for Disease Control have some guidelines that are thought to be, pretty much the best guidelines in terms of how to protect workers from exposure to the coronavirus. But OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, is not enforcing those guidelines, right? They're in the CDC, but OSHA, whose sole responsibility is to ensure that workers are safe, they are not enforcing those guidelines. And there's a bill that was passed by the House of Representatives called the HEROES Act that includes parity, that basically says OSHA has to enforce those CDC guidelines. And that bill, of course, has stalled in the Senate, and we all know why. And one other reason to go out and vote this November. But we know that if that bill passed, right, if it passed the Senate and was signed by the president, that we would then have a much better playing field in terms of how COVID-19 guidelines were enforced in the workplace. And that not only helps every worker, right, that works, and that's all of us, or at least maybe most of us, but it also makes, in no uncertain terms, a level playing field for all businesses, right? So that there isn't this sense of like, oh, wait a minute, these businesses are playing at a different level, and they have better conditions because they are treated better by the government. Like, this creates a level playing field for all businesses. And so I think that's essentially what we need to do, is to push the Senate. If I could leave you with 3 action items, I would say sign the petition that Sandy has talked about that would support the Mars workers, come out on October 27th to support those workers, and call your senator, call the Senate to make sure that the HEROES Act is passed. I know negotiations are back on supposedly. So it is time now again to make sure that the Senate hears our voices.
I now want to open up the panel to the audience for any questions that folks who have been so diligently paying attention to folks may have. And if you want to go ahead and just write your question in the chat, and then I can call on you, and then just so I can keep track of like who's asking questions, and so the panelists don't have to be like looking back down and all that stuff. So feel free to start populating the chat with any questions that you might have.
This is Marley, and I'll just, as folks are thinking about questions to share for the chat, I'm curious from the panelists, what is giving you hope right now? What is, bringing you, lifting you up as we have all been struggling through the last few months, and really, just, I think I've felt a little helpless at some points with what I can do, and just that the regulations that we need to keep workers safe are not necessarily in place or not enforceable. But what is giving you all hope, and what can all of us that are listening in on the line potentially do to maybe feel more hopeful?
Drink more tequila. That was a joke. No, I would say there's a lot of things that give me hope. One of the key things that give me hope is when workers unite and fight, right? Like we can look at the example of Mars workers as sort of the shining example of this in this moment. Although it's not just Mars, right? There's workers fighting in a ton of different places for better working conditions, better wages during the midst of this pandemic, right? And so it sort of goes against this whole notion that people are now too scared to fight, they're too, worried or whatever. That gives me hope. That lets me realize that the human spirit is indomitable, that we're not going to be just picked apart and thrown to the wayside as if we were, not human. So it's hopeful to see fight.
Yeah, I was just going to say the workers give me hope. And, when they call me and they share their experiences with me, and we have that bond and the trust of, them sharing intimate details of their work life and, their family and their goals, I would say that, the workers really give me hope. Coming together for this panel gives me hope. All these people that are taking all these actions and all these incredible activists in Chicago, and getting to feel part of that gives me hope. And and also all these workers definitely not just like Jose was saying, just even in the midst of COVID, like putting on their mask and then, going out to places like Mars and fighting, and Amazon and all these places who have like billions of dollars, but like, that's not what matters, right? It's the workers that actually matter. And we all know that.
For me, give me hope is Ali, Cindy, and everybody in the panel, and UIC. And now to see people still working, fighting for their rights, give me hope. And then I wish I can have more like Hispanic community has that information in Spanish. That way we can unite it and sign the petition and start working hard. I know it's very difficult situation, but let's do it for people. It's working right now for us, and start fighting. I love to fight against and to support the workers.
Just wanted to say, yeah, like what gives me hope is being part of like, you know, the fights that we have, whether small or big, and the fact that, you know, we're doing all of this and there's a pandemic, like just gives me hope. Like once this is over, like we're gonna come out stronger. So it gives me hope, you know, there's still more to do. So yeah, I mean, it is hard, but we'll come out on the other side a lot better.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you everybody for for participating in that and for that question. We have 2 more minutes, and there is a question from Yesenia Lopez. I actually want to give her the opportunity to ask the question herself. So Yesenia, if you could go ahead, if you're comfortable with that. Otherwise, I can ask the question.
Hello, everyone. This is Yesenia Lopez. I'm actually from Cook County Commissioner Alma Naya's office. And thank you for putting this together and the great information. I know there was a few policies that were referenced in regards to the city of Chicago. I was wondering if there's any legislative policies that are being pushed at the county level to see how we can also protect workers at Suburban Cook.
Yesenia, this isn't directly about a policy, but one of the things that we are currently working on with Sandy, sorry, Sandy, if I'm jumping in line ahead of you. But one of the things that I'm working with Sandy on is getting Cook County commissioners to sign on to a statement that would go to Mars CEO, asking him to abide by the good food purchasing policy guidelines of respecting workers and not retaliating against them when they ask for protections on COVID-19 issues. So it would be fantastic if Commissioner Amaya, you know, spearheaded that process or helped us get some of the other commissioners to sign on to that statement.
Thank you for sharing. I'll put my email in the chat box so we can continue this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so it is 3:30. As the moderator, I will officially close the stack on questions. I want to thank every single panelist here for being here and for the work that you do in your own organizations, and for divulging all this really great information to myself and all the folks who are audience members here today. Remember, to all the folks that joined us in our audience today, remember that on top of being here listening to this really great information, that folks need you in this struggle too, and that if we want you to sign that petition for the Mars Candy Factory. We want you to support our restaurant workers. We need you to, at every single opportunity that you can, engage in the fight. And the chats or the links to all the things that you can be doing to help out are in the chat. So please go ahead and give those things a click and support in whatever way that you can. I'm glad to have moderated, and I want to say just thank you from the bottom of my heart to the folks that put this together, and yeah, happy to have done so. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will see you continuing in the food revolution. Thank you.
Thank you.